The mistress lied to the billionaire, claiming his wife miscarried her baby. Believing her, he sent his innocent wife to jail for 3 years. Every month he went to see her, but she refused to meet him in jail. When she finally walked free, she rejected him completely. Here's a long, powerful, and emotionally moving prayer message, giving enormous respect to women and including a heartfelt Happy New Year greeting, following your preferred style and pattern. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Family, your own family story channel. May the Almighty bless every woman with strength that cannot be shaken, courage that cannot be broken, and a heart so pure it spreads love to every soul she touches. May she always be honored, respected, and cherished, for she is the backbone of families, the light that guides generations, and the silent hero whose sacrifices are beyond measure. May every home be filled with laughter, peace, and abundance. May health, joy, and love surround you at every step, and may every challenge turn into a blessing. May your dreams rise higher than the stars, and may every tear be replaced with endless smiles. As we step into this new year, may 2026 bring unshakable hope, boundless happiness, and prosperity to you and your loved ones. May our bonds as a family grow stronger, and may love, respect, and kindness define every moment of your lives. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter." Trinity Rodman's hands didn't shake anymore when she held a scalpel. A decade of saving lives in the trauma unit had taught her that steady hands meant the difference between a mother going home to her children or a family receiving the worst news of their lives. But tonight, standing in the kitchen of the penthouse she shared with her husband, her hands trembled as she frosted the anniversary cake she'd spent all afternoon baking. 10 years. A full decade of marriage to Jalen Hurts. She stepped back to admire her work. The cake was perfect, 3 layers of red velvet with cream cheese frosting, his favorite. She'd even managed to pipe "A Decade of Us" across the top in elegant script, though her naturally steady surgeon's hand had wavered more than once. The champagne was chilling. The dinner reservations at Marcello's were confirmed. She'd bought a new dress, deep emerald silk that Jalen always said made her skin glow like burnished gold. Everything was perfect. So why did her chest feel like someone was squeezing it with both hands? Trinity walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. The penthouse had been Jalen's wedding gift to her, back when she was fresh out of her residency and he was building his import-export business. She'd been too in love to question the vagueness of his work, too intoxicated by the way he looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. Like she hung the moon and stars just by breathing. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkening glass. At 35, she'd maintained the athletic build from her college track days. Her dark skin was flawless, her natural hair styled in elegant braids that fell past her shoulders. She looked good. She looked happy. But the woman in the reflection had questions in her eyes that Trinity didn't want to answer. The elevator dinged, pulling her from her thoughts. Jalen walked in, and for a moment, Trinity's breath caught the way it had the first time she'd seen him at her best friend's barbecue all those years ago. He was devastatingly handsome in his tailored charcoal suit, his presence filling the room the way it always did. Power radiated from him, the kind of confidence that came from a man who knew he controlled everything around him. "Baby," he said, his voice warm as he set down his briefcase. His eyes swept over her, and she saw appreciation flicker there. "You look beautiful." Trinity smiled, pushing away the tightness in her chest. "Happy anniversary." He crossed to her in long strides, pulling her into his arms. He smelled like expensive cologne and something else, something floral and foreign that made her stomach clench, but she pushed that thought away too. She was being paranoid, ridiculous, insecure. 10 years, Jalen murmured against her hair. "God, Trinity, I remember the first time I saw you. You were wearing those ridiculous scrubs with the cartoon cats on them, laughing at something your friend said, and I thought I'd never seen anything more perfect in my life." She pulled back to look at him, searching his face for the man she'd married. "You said you'd give me the world." "And I did, didn't I?" He gestured around the penthouse, the designer furniture, the original artwork on the walls. "Everything I promised." Almost everything, Trinity thought, but she didn't say it. The elephant in the room, the one subject they'd stopped discussing after the first few years. Children. A family. The thing that had slowly, quietly become a chasm between them, filled with doctor's appointments and negative pregnancy tests, and Jalen's increasingly distant responses every time she brought it up. The way his jaw would tighten, the way he'd changed the subject, the way he'd started looking at her like she was broken. "I made your favorite cake," she said instead, deflecting. His phone buzzed, then again, and again. The sound cut through the moment like a scalpel through skin. Jalen's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry, baby, I need to take this. Business thing that can't wait." He was already walking toward his study before Trinity could respond. She stood alone in the kitchen, the anniversary cake between them like a monument to something that was slipping away, and she couldn't even articulate what. But she could feel it. The distance, the lies, the slow, creeping death of everything they'd built. The memory hit her without warning, as vivid as if she were living it again, 10 years ago, on their wedding day. She'd been terrified walking down that aisle, not because she doubted Jalen, but because the love felt too big, too overwhelming. Her father, days away from dying of cancer, had been the one to give her away. He'd squeezed her hand before letting go and whispered, "That man loves you like I love your mother. Don't ever let go of that." 6 months later, her father was gone. Jalen had held her through every tear, every sleepless night. He'd been her rock, and she'd been his. Through the early struggles of his business, through her brutal residency hours, through the loss of his mother to a stroke that came without warning, they'd been partners, equals, unshakable, the kind of love people wrote songs about. When had that changed? When had they become strangers sharing a bed? Trinity began setting the table, each movement automatic. The china they'd received as a wedding gift, the crystal glasses her mother had insisted on, the silver candlesticks that had belonged to Jalen's grandmother. She lit the candles and stood back. It looked like a scene from a magazine, perfect and beautiful and somehow completely hollow. 40 minutes passed before Jalen emerged from his study. His expression was distracted, his fingers still typing something on his phone as he walked. He didn't even look up. "Sorry about that," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "Crisis at the warehouse." "It's our anniversary," Trinity said quietly. He finally looked at her, and guilt flickered across his face like a shadow. "I know. I'm sorry. Let me make it up to you." He pocketed his phone and pulled out her chair with exaggerated gallantry. "Tell me about your day. Did you save any lives?" She wanted to ask him why his collar had a smudge of makeup on it, foundation 2 shades lighter than her own. She wanted to ask why he'd started working late every Thursday night for the past several months. She wanted to ask why he flinched every time she mentioned having children now, like the very idea caused him physical pain. But instead she smiled that perfect wife smile and told him about the teenager she'd saved in the ER that afternoon, the one who'd come in with a collapsed lung after a car accident. Jalen listened, but his attention kept drifting. His phone sat on the table between them, face down, vibrating silently every few minutes, like a living thing demanding his attention. "Who keeps texting you?" Trinity finally asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "Melody," he said, too quickly, too practiced. "My new executive assistant. She's handling the Singapore deal. Very thorough, maybe too thorough." Melody. Trinity had met her once, briefly, when she'd stopped by Jalen's office to drop off papers he'd forgotten. A striking woman with sharp features and sharper eyes, wearing a dress that seemed more appropriate for a nightclub than an office. She'd looked at Trinity the way a lioness might assess a gazelle, sizing up competition, calculating weaknesses, planning the kill. "It's 9 at night," Trinity said. "Does she not have boundaries?" Jalen's jaw tightened. "She's ambitious, working her way up. You know how that is. You did the same thing during your residency." Trinity did know. She'd worked 100-hour weeks during her residency, had sacrificed sleep and social life and everything else to become the surgeon she was today. But she'd never texted someone else's husband at 9 o'clock on their anniversary. She'd never crossed that line. The dinner was delicious, the cake was perfect, the champagne was expensive. But something fundamental had shifted, and Trinity couldn't unsee it now that she'd started looking. Every smile from Jalen felt rehearsed. Every touch felt obligatory. Every word felt like a lie wrapped in honey. After dinner, Jalen disappeared into the shower while Trinity cleaned up. His phone sat on the counter, still buzzing periodically like her insistent heartbeat. She'd never been the type to snoop. In 10 years of marriage, she'd never once gone through his phone or his emails or his pockets. Trust had been the foundation of everything between them, the bedrock, the thing that made them different from all the other couples who fell apart. But tonight, as the phone lit up again with another message, Trinity's hand hovered over it. She didn't pick it up. She didn't unlock it. She just read the preview on the screen. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Usual place. Wear what I like." Trinity's heart stopped. Then it started again, pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, feel it in her throat. Her hands, those steady surgeon's hands that never trembled during the worst traumas, began to shake. She was setting down the phone when something fell from Jalen's suit jacket, which he'd draped over the chair. A receipt. Trinity picked it up with numb fingers, her vision tunneling. The Grandview Hotel, presidential suite, charged to his personal card, not the business account. Last Thursday night. The same Thursday, he'd told her he was at the warehouse handling an inventory crisis. The same Thursday, she'd called him and heard music and laughter in the background before he'd hung up quickly, claiming bad reception. Trinity stood in her perfect kitchen, in her perfect penthouse, wearing her perfect anniversary dress, holding evidence of her perfect life crumbling to dust in her hands. The surgeon in her, the part that remained calm during the worst traumas, analyzed the situation with brutal clarity. The late nights, the new assistant, the sudden disinterest in starting a family, the way he'd stopped looking at her like she was the only woman in the world. The perfume that wasn't hers, the lipstick that wasn't her shade, the lies that weren't even good anymore. Jalen emerged from the bathroom, a towel around his waist, water droplets still on his shoulders. He was still beautiful, still the man she'd loved for a decade. But now she saw him differently, like a tumor she'd discovered during a routine scan. Something malignant hiding beneath perfect skin, spreading its poison through everything healthy. "Ready for bed?" he asked, smiling that smile that used to make her melt. Trinity folded the receipt carefully and slipped it into her pocket. "Actually, I need to run to the hospital. Emergency consult." It was a lie. The first lie she'd ever told him in 10 years of marriage. But as she grabbed her purse and walked toward the elevator, Trinity Rodman made a decision that would change everything. She wouldn't confront him. Not yet. Not until she knew everything. Not until she had all the facts. Because if there was one thing a decade of surgery had taught her, it was this. You never cut until you know exactly what you're dealing with. You never operate without a plan, and you never, ever let your emotions guide the scalpel. The elevator doors closed on Jalen calling after her, confusion in his voice, maybe even a hint of relief. Trinity pulled out her phone and opened the tracking app she'd never had reason to use before, the one they'd installed years ago for safety, so they could always find each other in case of emergency. Tomorrow was Thursday, and tomorrow Trinity Rodman would finally see the truth with her own eyes. She would see what her husband had been doing every Thursday night for months. She would see who Melody really was. She would see everything. Her hands were steady again, surgeon's hands, steady and precise and ready to cut away the disease. Chapter 2. The Viper's Game. Trinity had performed emergency surgery at 3 in the morning after working a double shift. She'd held a man's heart in her hands while his family prayed in the waiting room. She'd told parents their child didn't survive the operating table. But nothing in her decade of medical training prepared her for the sight that greeted her Thursday evening outside the Grandview Hotel. She sat in her car across the street, engine off, windows cracked just enough to let in the autumn air that smelled like rain and dying leaves. The tracking app on her phone showed Jalen's location as a blinking dot inside the hotel, mocking her with its steady pulse. He'd told her this morning he had a late meeting with investors from Tokyo. He'd kissed her forehead absently on his way out, already distracted, already lying to her face with practiced ease. 6 o'clock became 7, 7 became 8. Trinity sat in the darkness, watching the hotel entrance like she was on a stakeout. She'd brought coffee that had gone cold hours ago. She'd turned off her phone notifications. She'd told the hospital she was unavailable tonight. Everything in her life had narrowed down to this moment, this car, this view of the hotel where her husband was doing God knows what with God knows who. At 8:45, Jalen emerged from the hotel entrance. He wasn't alone. Melody Hobson walked beside him, her hand on his arm, laughing at something he'd said. She wore a red dress that hugged every curve, her hair swept up in a style that screamed effort and intention. But it was the way Jalen looked at her that made Trinity's blood freeze in her veins. The same way he used to look at Trinity, like she was the sun and he was a planet caught in her orbit. They stopped at the valet stand. Jalen's hand went to the small of Melody's back, intimate and familiar, not the touch of a boss to his assistant, the touch of a man to his lover. Then Melody turned, stood on her toes, and kissed him. Not a peck, a real kiss. The kind that spoke of practice and familiarity and 1,000 kisses before this one. Trinity's vision went red at the edges. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles ached. She'd known. Of course she'd known. But knowing and seeing were two different kinds of pain. Suspicion was a dull ache. This was a knife twisting in her chest. She watched Jalen put Melody in a car, watched him lean in for another kiss, watched him stand there watching her drive away like a lovesick teenager. Then he got in his own car and drove off, probably heading home to Trinity with another lie ready on his tongue. Trinity sat in her car for another hour, shaking, not crying, just shaking. The surgeon in her had gone cold and calculating. She needed evidence, real evidence, pictures, recordings, something concrete. Because when this came to light, when she burned his world down, she needed proof that would stand up in court. She drove home in a daze. Jalen was already there, lounging on the couch in sweatpants, watching a basketball game like he hadn't just spent hours in a hotel room with another woman. "Hey, baby," he called out without looking at her. "How was the consult?" "Complicated," Trinity said, her voice steady. "Patient might not make it." "That's rough. You want to talk about it?" "No," she thought. "I want to ask you how long you've been sleeping with your assistant. I want to know if you ever loved me at all, or if I was just convenient until something better came along." "I'm tired," she said instead. "Going to bed." That night, Trinity lay beside her husband and planned. Not revenge, not yet. But she needed to know everything. How long had this been going on? Was it just sex? Was he in love with her? Was he planning to leave Trinity? The questions circled her mind like vultures. The next morning, Trinity called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. She waited until Jalen left for the office. Then she did something she'd never done before. She went to his office unannounced. The receptionist, a sweet older woman named Dorothy, smiled when Trinity walked in. "Dr. Rodman! What a surprise!" Mr. Hertz didn't mention you were coming in. Surprise visit, Trinity said, returning the smile. Is he free? He's in a meeting, but I'm sure he'd want to see you. Let me buzz him. Actually, I'll just wait. I need to speak with Melody first anyway. Is she around? Dorothy's smile faltered slightly. She's in her office, down the hall, last door on the right. Trinity walked down the hallway of her husband's company, a place she'd been 100 times before, but now felt foreign and hostile. She knocked on Melody's door. Come in, a voice called. Melody sat behind her desk, perfectly made up at 9 in the morning, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Her smile when she saw Trinity was razor-sharp. Trinity, she said, standing. What a surprise. Is everything okay? I wanted to meet the woman who's been keeping my husband so busy lately, Trinity said, closing the door behind her. He talks about you constantly, says you're very thorough. Melody's smile widened. I do my best. Jalen is very demanding, but I always deliver what he needs. The double meaning wasn't subtle. Trinity recognized a predator when she saw one. This woman knew exactly what she was doing. How long have you been working here? Trinity asked, sitting down uninvited. 8 months, Melody said. Best job I've ever had. Very satisfying. 8 months. Trinity did the math. 8 months ago was when Jalen had started pulling away, when the late nights had started, when he'd stopped touching her like he meant it. That's wonderful, Trinity said, her voice honey-sweet. Jalen's lucky to have such dedicated staff. Melody leaned forward, and Trinity saw calculation in her eyes. A decision being made. Can I be honest with you, Trinity? Woman to woman? Please. Your marriage is over, Melody said simply. Jalen hasn't said it yet, but I can see it. He's not happy. He hasn't been happy for a long time. And I can give him something you can't. Trinity's heart hammered in her chest, but her face remained calm. And what's that? Melody's hand went to her stomach, a gesture so theatrical Trinity almost laughed. A child. I'm pregnant. 12 weeks. It's Jalen's. The world stopped spinning. Everything went silent except for the sound of Trinity's own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Pregnant. This woman was claiming to be pregnant with her husband's baby. The baby Trinity had wanted for years, the baby Jalen said he wasn't ready for, the baby he'd refused to even discuss anymore. Does he know? Trinity heard herself ask. I told him last week, Melody said, and now her smile was pure triumph. He's over the moon. He wants this baby, Trinity. He wants me. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to file for divorce quietly. You're going to take your settlement and walk away, or I'm going to make this very public and very ugly. Your choice. Trinity stood slowly. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady as stone. Show me the ultrasound. Melody blinked. What? You said you're 12 weeks pregnant. Show me the ultrasound. As a doctor, I'd love to see it. Melody's jaw tightened. She pulled out her phone, swiped through it, then turned it around. The image on the screen showed a standard ultrasound of a 12-week fetus. It looked legitimate. It looked real. But Trinity had seen thousands of ultrasounds in her career. She knew what to look for. That's lovely, Trinity said softly. I hope you and Jalen are very happy together. She walked out of that office with her head held high, her spine straight, her face calm. She made it to her car. She made it home. And then, finally, alone in the penthouse she'd thought was her home, Trinity Rodman fell apart. She didn't cry. She screamed. She threw her wedding china against the wall and watched it shatter into 1,000 pieces. She tore down the wedding photos that lined the hallway. She destroyed the anniversary cake that still sat in the refrigerator. She let herself feel every ounce of rage and betrayal and agony that she'd been holding back. And then, when the storm passed, she sat in the wreckage of her perfect life and made a decision. If Melody wanted war, Trinity would give her war. But she would do it smart. She would do it right. Because Trinity Rodman wasn't just a wife, she was a surgeon, and she knew exactly how to cut deep. That afternoon, she went back to work. She called a lawyer, the best divorce attorney in the city. She opened a separate bank account and started moving money. She documented everything, every lie, every receipt, every text message she could find. She took photos of the ultrasound Melody had shown her and sent them to a colleague in obstetrics. And that evening, when Jalen came home, she acted normal. She cooked dinner, she asked about his day, she smiled and laughed and played the perfect wife, all while planning his destruction. But then came the night everything changed. The night Melody pushed too far. Chapter 3. The fall Trinity should have seen it coming. A woman like Melody Hobson didn't just make threats. She executed them. It happened 2 weeks after their confrontation in the office. 2 weeks of Trinity playing the dutiful wife while secretly meeting with lawyers and private investigators. 2 weeks of gathering evidence, copying files, documenting every lie. 2 weeks of Jalen coming home later and later, his lies getting lazier, his attention on Trinity practically non-existent. He'd stopped pretending. That was what hurt most. He no longer bothered to cover his tracks, no longer created elaborate excuses. He'd simply text, "working late," and Trinity would know he was with Melody. Some nights he didn't come home at all. When she asked, he'd shrug and say he'd crashed at the office. Trinity's lawyer had advised her to file immediately to get ahead of whatever Melody was planning. But Trinity wanted more. She wanted evidence of the pregnancy fraud. She wanted to catch them in a lie so big that Jalen couldn't talk his way out of it. So she waited, watched, documented. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Jalen's secretary, Dorothy, her voice tight with something that sounded like fear. "Dr. Rodman, you need to come to the office right away. There's been an incident." Trinity's stomach dropped. "What kind of incident? Please just come. It's urgent." Trinity left the hospital mid-shift, her mind racing through possibilities. An accident? A heart attack? Had something happened to Jalen? Despite everything, despite the betrayal and the lies, her first instinct was still to worry about him. 10 years of loving someone didn't disappear overnight. She arrived at the building to find police cars parked outside. Her blood turned to ice. Trinity ran through the lobby, her heart hammering. She burst into Jalen's office to find chaos. Jalen standing there looking stricken, Melody sitting in a chair, crying hysterically, her dress torn at the shoulder, and 2 police officers taking notes. "What happened?" Trinity demanded. Everyone turned to look at her. Melody's eyes met hers, and Trinity saw something there that made her blood run cold. Triumph. Beneath the tears and the hysterics, Melody Hobson looked triumphant. "Mrs. Hertz," one of the officers said, "I'm Officer Patterson. There's been an assault." "Assault?" Trinity looked between them all, confused. "Who was assaulted?" "I was," Melody sobbed, pointing directly at Trinity. "She attacked me. She pushed me. She killed my baby." Time stopped. The words didn't make sense. Trinity's brain couldn't process them. "What?" Trinity whispered. "I wasn't even here. I was at the hospital. I have witnesses. I have security footage. I haven't been here in 2 weeks." "She's lying," Melody wailed, her performance worthy of an Oscar. "She came to my office. She confronted me about the affair, about the baby. She said I'd ruined her life. She pushed me into my desk. I fell. I'm bleeding. My baby, oh God, my baby." Trinity looked at Jalen, waiting for him to defend her, to tell them this was insane. But Jalen's face was stone. He was looking at Melody like she was a wounded bird, all his protective instincts engaged. "Jalen," Trinity said slowly, tell them I wasn't here." But Jalen didn't speak. He just stared at Melody, at the blood on her dress, at her tears, and Trinity realized with horror that he believed her. He actually believed this woman over his wife of 10 years. "Mrs. Hertz, we need you to come with us," Officer Patterson said, moving toward her. "No," Trinity said, backing away. "This is insane. I wasn't here. Check the hospital logs, check the security cameras. I have an alibi." The cameras were down for maintenance this afternoon, Melody said, her voice shaking but her eyes sharp. Just our luck. Of course they were. This had been planned, all of it. The timing, the location, the convenient camera malfunction. Melody had set this trap perfectly. "I need medical attention," Melody whimpered. "Please, my baby." "We're calling an ambulance," the other officer said. "Mrs. Hertz, you have the right to remain silent." Trinity heard the words from far away. She was being arrested. She was being arrested for an assault she didn't commit, for killing a baby that didn't exist because a woman wanted her husband and was willing to destroy her to get him. She looked at Jalen one last time. "You know I didn't do this. You know me. 10 years, Jalen. Doesn't that mean anything?" Jalen's jaw tightened. "I saw the bruises, Trinity. I saw her fall. Security may not have caught you coming in, but I know you were here earlier this week. You confronted her. She told me. You threatened her." "I asked to see her ultrasound," Trinity said, her voice breaking. "That's all I did. I didn't threaten her. I didn't touch her." "Take her," Jalen said to the officers, his voice cold. "I want her prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." The man she'd loved for a decade, the man she'd built her life around, the man who'd promised to love her forever, in sickness and health, for better or worse. That man just ordered her arrest without a moment of doubt. Trinity didn't resist as they handcuffed her. She didn't cry as they led her past employees who'd known her for years, their faces shocked and judging. She didn't speak as they put her in the police car. She just watched Jalen rush to Melody's side, cradling her like she was precious china, and understood that her marriage was dead. Had been dead for months. She'd just been too loyal to see it. The hospital called Trinity's lawyer. The security footage from the hospital proved she'd been in surgery all afternoon. Her alibi was airtight, but by then it was too late. Melody had gone to the emergency room. She'd claimed she was 12 weeks pregnant and had suffered trauma to her abdomen. She'd cried and screamed about losing her baby, and somehow, magically, there were medical records that supported her claims. Records that said she'd been pregnant. Records that said the trauma had caused a miscarriage. Trinity's lawyer looked at those records and his face went pale. "They're good, really good. These look legitimate." "Because Jalen paid for them," Trinity said flatly. "He has connections everywhere. Medical examiners, doctors, lab technicians. He can create any paper trail he wants. Then we need to prove that. We need to find out which doctor signed off on these records. We need to find the truth." But proving the truth took time, and Trinity didn't have time. The prosecutor, an ambitious young woman looking to make a name for herself, pushed for charges. Assault. Assault causing the death of an unborn child. The headlines were brutal. "Prominent surgeon arrested for killing husband's unborn baby." The hospital suspended her pending investigation. Her friends stopped calling. Her colleagues avoided her. The trial was a nightmare. Melody took the stand, her performance devastating. She cried. She trembled. She described in vivid detail how Trinity had confronted her, how she'd been terrified, how Trinity had pushed her. She showed the jury her bruises, bruises that Trinity knew had been self-inflicted but couldn't prove. She showed medical records that said she'd been pregnant, lost the baby, would never be able to have children now because of the trauma. Trinity's lawyer tried to poke holes in her story. Where were the security cameras? Why wasn't Trinity on any footage entering the building? Why did the hospital have proof Trinity was in surgery? But Melody had an answer for everything. Trinity must have come earlier, must have waited, must have caught her in a moment when cameras couldn't see, and the jury, looking at this beautiful, tragic woman who'd lost her baby, believed her. Trinity's lawyer fought hard. He brought in expert witnesses. He showed the hospital footage. He demonstrated the timeline didn't make sense, but Jalen's money bought better lawyers, better experts, better lies. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, The forewoman wouldn't look at Trinity. Guilty. The judge sentenced her 3 weeks later. Dr. Trinity Rodman, you have been found guilty of assault causing the miscarriage of an unborn child. The court sentences you to 3 years in state prison. Trinity stood to hear her sentence and felt nothing. She'd already died. This was just her body going through the motions. She looked at Jalen in the gallery. He sat beside Melody, his arm around her. He wouldn't meet Trinity's eyes. The man who'd promised to love her forever couldn't even look at her as she was sentenced to prison for a crime she didn't commit. Trinity's lawyer filed appeals, but the judge denied them all. The evidence was too strong, the medical records too convincing. Jalen's money had bought a perfect conviction. On the day Trinity was transferred to prison, she stood in the courtroom and looked directly at Jalen. He finally met her gaze, and she saw guilt there. Doubt. Maybe even regret. She didn't say anything. She just smiled. A small, cold smile that made Jalen's face go pale. Because Trinity Rodman had learned something in those months between her arrest and conviction. She'd learned that the justice system could be bought, that love meant nothing against ambition and lies, that the man she'd trusted with her life could betray her without a second thought. But most importantly, she'd learned patience. 3 years. She would count every single day. And when she walked out of that prison, she would make them both pay for what they'd done to her. The prison gates closed behind her with a sound like a coffin lid slamming shut. Trinity didn't look back. She looked forward, toward 3 years from now, toward revenge. Chapter 4. The Cage. The intake process at Westfield Correctional Facility stripped away everything Trinity had left. They took her clothes, her jewelry, the wedding ring she'd worn for 10 years even after the arrest. They took her dignity as they processed her like cattle, photographing, fingerprinting, cataloging every inch of her like she was property of the state now. Dr. Rodman, the intake officer said, not unkindly. Or should I say just Rodman now? You're a celebrity here. Everyone's heard about the surgeon who killed her husband's mistress's baby. I didn't do it, Trinity said automatically, though she'd stopped expecting anyone to believe her. They all say that. The officer handed her a grey uniform, scratchy and shapeless. Cell block D. Keep your head down, don't make trouble. 3 years will go faster than you think. 3 years. 1,095 days. Trinity had done the math. 1,095 days of her life stolen because of a lie. Her cell was 8 feet by 10 feet, concrete walls, a metal bed with a thin mattress, a toilet with no seat, a small metal desk bolted to the wall. Her cellmate was a woman named Lakeisha Brown, inside for drug possession, currently sleeping off whatever they'd given her during processing. Trinity sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the wall. She didn't cry. She was done crying. Instead, she began counting. Day 1. 1,094 to go. The first month was hell. The other inmates had heard about her case. Some thought she was a monster. Others thought she was weak for letting a man put her here. Nobody thought she was innocent. But Trinity kept her head down and her mouth shut. She worked in the prison library, organizing books that nobody read. She ate in silence. She slept with one eye open. She learned the rhythm of prison life. The morning count, the meal times, the yard time, the lockdowns. She learned who to avoid and who to acknowledge. She learned to move through the system like a ghost, and every month, like clockwork, Jalen came to visit. The first time the guard told her she had a visitor, Trinity's heart had leaped. Maybe he'd figured it out. Maybe he knew the truth now. Maybe he'd come to apologize, to say he was working on getting her out. But when she walked into the visiting room and saw him sitting there in his expensive suit, looking uncomfortable and out of place, Trinity's hope died. "Baby," he said when she sat down across from him, "I'm so sorry. I know you're angry, but we need to talk. I need to explain." Trinity looked at him, really looked at him. He'd aged in the month since her sentencing. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Guilt, maybe. or just stress? I have nothing to say to you, Trinity said quietly. Please, just listen. I know things got out of hand. I know Melody. She probably exaggerated what happened. But baby, I thought you'd hurt her. I thought you'd hurt our baby. There was no baby, Jalen. His face tightened. The medical records were fake. You know they were fake. You paid for them. I didn't. Trinity, I swear to God, I didn't know about any fake records. Melody showed me her ultrasounds. She was pregnant. I saw the proof. Trinity laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You're still defending her. Even now, even after she put your wife in prison. Ex-wife, Jalen said softly. We're divorced now. The papers went through last week. Of course they did. Trinity had refused to sign them, but apparently Jalen's lawyers had found a way around that too. She wasn't even his wife anymore. She was nothing to him, just an inconvenient woman in a grey uniform behind bulletproof glass. I hope you're very happy together, Trinity said, standing up. Wait. Trinity, please. I want to help you. I can get you a better lawyer. I can file new appeals. You can leave, Trinity said, and don't come back. But Jalen did come back, every month, like clockwork. Sometimes he'd try to talk to her about their marriage, about the good times, about how sorry he was. Sometimes he'd just sit there in silence, staring at her like he was trying to memorize her face. Sometimes he'd bring news about the outside world, like she cared that his business was thriving or that Melody was doing well. Trinity refused every visit, every single one. She'd tell the guards to send him away. He'd leave flowers, letters, money for her commissary account. She returned them all. She wanted nothing from him, not his guilt, not his money, not his pathetic attempts at redemption. That man loves you, Lakeisha said one night, after Trinity had refused another visit. Whatever happened between you, he still loves you. He loves his guilt, Trinity corrected. He knows what he did to me. He knows I'm innocent, but he's too much of a coward to admit it. Lakeisha was quiet for a moment. You know what I heard? Melody Hobson married him. 2 months after you got locked up, she became Mrs. Jalen Hurts. That tell you everything you need to know about their love story. Trinity had already known, but hearing it out loud made it real. Jalen had married his mistress, the woman who'd destroyed Trinity's life, the woman who'd lied about a pregnancy, faked a miscarriage, and sent an innocent woman to prison. That was who Jalen had chosen. I'm going to destroy them both, Trinity said quietly. Lakeisha looked at her with new respect. How? I don't know yet, but I have 3 years to figure it out. It was in the 2nd month that Trinity met Keisha Okonkwo. Keisha was in the library when Trinity was shelving books, and she was reading something that caught Trinity's attention, a legal textbook on financial fraud. You a lawyer? Trinity asked. Keisha looked up. She was older, maybe mid-50s, with sharp eyes and a way of sitting that suggested she didn't belong here any more than Trinity did. I was a forensic accountant, Keisha said. Caught my boss embezzling and he framed me for it. Been here for 2 years. Got 3 more to go. Wrongfully convicted? Aren't we all? Keisha smiled without humor. But yeah, I'm actually innocent. You? Trinity hesitated, then sat down. My husband's mistress framed me for assault. Said I made her miscarry his baby. The baby didn't exist. Keisha studied her. You're the doctor. I heard about you. Trinity Rodman. Just Trinity now. Well, just Trinity. You want to get revenge on your husband? More than I want my next breath. Keisha's smile was sharp and dangerous. Then let me teach you something. The best revenge isn't physical. It's financial. You take away everything a man has built, everything he values, and you leave him with nothing. That hurts more than any assault ever could. That conversation changed everything. Keisha became Trinity's teacher, and Trinity became the most dedicated student she'd ever been. During their library time, Keisha taught her how to track money, how to identify shell companies, how to follow paper trails through offshore accounts, how to recognize money laundering patterns, how to document everything in ways that would stand up in federal court. "Your husband runs an import-export business?" Keisha asked one day. "That's what he calls it?" "But it's not. Not really. Let me guess. Cash-intensive business, lots of overseas transactions, property holdings in different names, multiple accounts. Am I close?" Trinity thought about it, about Jalen's mysterious business trips, his resistance to her ever getting too involved in his work, the way he'd always kept their finances separate, the expensive lifestyle that didn't quite match his official income. "You think he's laundering money?" "Honey, I'd bet my freedom on it. And if he is, if we can prove it, we can bring his whole empire down. The federal government doesn't play games with financial crimes. They'll take everything, his business, his properties, his bank accounts. They'll leave him with nothing." Trinity leaned forward. "Teach me everything. I want to know it all." So Keisha did. For the next year, Trinity absorbed everything like a sponge. She learned about RICO statutes and civil forfeiture. She learned about tax evasion and wire fraud. She learned about how criminal enterprises hide their money and how law enforcement finds it. She learned to think like a forensic accountant, to see patterns where others saw chaos. And through it all, Jalen kept coming to visit. Every month, and every month, Trinity refused to see him. The guards started to gossip about it, about the handsome man in expensive suits who came faithfully to see the wife he'd helped put in prison, about how she refused him every time, about the flowers he left that she never touched. "He's persistent," one guard said. "Most men would have given up by now." "He's guilty," Trinity corrected. "He knows he destroyed an innocent woman's life. This is his penance." But Trinity didn't care about Jalen's guilt. She cared about gathering the ammunition she'd need when she got out. And thanks to Keisha, she had a plan. During visiting hours when Trinity refused to see Jalen, she did see someone else. Detective Rashad Pierce. He was the one cop who doubted her conviction from the start. Young, ambitious, but honest in a way that was rare in his profession. He'd testified at her trial that the timeline didn't make sense. His testimony hadn't been enough to save her, but it had planted doubt. Trinity had reached out to him through her lawyer. At first he'd been reluctant, but when she'd explained what she'd learned, what she suspected about Jalen's business, his interest had been piqued. "You're asking me to investigate one of the most powerful men in the city," Rashad said during their first meeting. "Based on what? A hunch?" "Based on pattern recognition," Trinity corrected. "Based on everything Keisha Okonkwo taught me. Jalen Hurts is laundering money for someone, multiple someones. His business is a front, and if you dig deep enough, you'll find proof." "And what do you want in exchange?" "Immunity. When I get out, I'm going to need protection. I'm going to testify against him. I'm going to give you everything I know, but I need guarantees." Rashad had taken her case to his captain. They'd opened a quiet investigation. Nothing official, nothing that would tip off Jalen's connections in the department. But they started looking, and what they found made Rashad come back to Trinity with a new expression on his face. Excitement. "You were right," he said during their next meeting, "about all of it. Jalen Hurts isn't just laundering money. He's doing it for 3 different cartel operations. The feds have been trying to build a case against him for years, but they couldn't get close enough. You're going to be their star witness." Trinity smiled. It was the first real smile she'd worn since being arrested. "Tell me what you need. I'll give you everything." In her final year of prison, Trinity transformed. She wasn't a broken woman anymore. She was a weapon being sharpened. She worked out in the yard, building back the muscle she'd lost. She studied legal documents Rashad smuggled in. She memorized account numbers and transaction patterns. She became something new, something dangerous. Lakeisha noticed. "You're different, harder." "I'm focused," Trinity corrected. "On the day I walk out of here. What happens then?" Trinity's smile was cold. "Then I destroy the man who put me here and the woman who helped him do it." Chapter 5. The Shadow Network. Year 2 inside marked Trinity's transformation from victim to strategist. The prison library became her war room. The legal textbooks Keisha smuggled in became her weapons, and every refused visit from Jalen became another brick in the wall of her resolve. Trinity learned that Jalen wasn't just visiting her. He was also sending letters, long, rambling letters that the guards gave her, and she never opened. They piled up in a box under her bed, dozens of them, his guilt manifested in expensive stationery and fountain pen ink. "You should read them," Lakeisha suggested one night. "Know your enemy." So Trinity did. She opened the first letter, dated 1 month after her incarceration, and read Jalen's words. "Baby, I know you're angry. I know you think I betrayed you, but I genuinely believed you'd hurt Melody. I saw her injuries. I saw the medical records. I'm not a doctor like you. I couldn't know they were fake. Please, let me visit. Let me explain. I still love you." She opened the 10th letter, dated 6 months in. "Melody and I got married last week. I know how that sounds. I know you'll hate me for it, but I need you to understand she was there for me during the trial. She helped me process what happened. I was confused. I needed someone. It doesn't mean I don't still care about you." She opened the 20th letter, dated 1 year in. "I made a mistake. God, Trinity, I made such a terrible mistake. Melody isn't who I thought she was. She's spending money like water. She's controlling. She's nothing like you. But I'm trapped now. I married her. I can't just leave. Please write back. Please let me know you're okay. I dream about you every night." The final letter she opened was dated just last week. "I hired a private investigator. He found something. Melody's real name isn't Melody Hobson. It's Melissa Thornwood. She's wanted for fraud in 3 states. She was never pregnant, was she? The medical records were fake." "Oh God, Trinity, what did I do to you?" Trinity read that last letter 3 times. Then she laughed. It was a sound that made Lakeisha sit up in alarm. "He figured it out," Trinity said, still laughing. "After 2 years, after marrying her, after destroying my life, he finally figured out she played him. What are you going to do?" Trinity folded the letter carefully. "Nothing. Let him drown in his guilt. Let him realize he destroyed an innocent woman for a con artist. Let him feel that every single day for the rest of his pathetic life." But the information about Melody's real identity was valuable. Trinity passed it to Rashad during his next visit. "Melissa Thornwood," Rashad said, pulling up records on his tablet. "Jesus, she's got a rap sheet longer than my arm. Fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. She's been running cons for 15 years. How the hell did she pass Jalen's background check?" "She didn't," Trinity said. "I'd bet anything Jalen never ran one. He was too busy thinking with something other than his brain." Rashad grinned. "We can use this. If we can prove she fabricated the medical records, we can get your conviction overturned." "No," Trinity said sharply. "No. I don't want my conviction overturned. Not yet. I want to serve my full sentence, because when I walk out of here on my scheduled release date, I'll have served my time. I'll have paid my debt to society. And then, when I bring down Jalen and Melody, they can't say I'm just a bitter ex-wife trying to avoid prison. I'll have already done my time. I'll be clean." Rashad stared at her. "You're willing to stay in here another year, just to make sure your revenge sticks?" "I'm willing to stay in here another year, to make sure they both go down for everything they've done." It was a calculated risk, but Trinity had learned patience. She'd learned that the best revenge was methodical, systematic, and absolutely devastating. She didn't want to just get out. She wanted to burn their lives to the ground so thoroughly they'd never recover. Through Keisha's contacts on the outside, former colleagues who owed her favors, Trinity began to build a network. She learned that Melody, now Mrs. Jalen Hurts, was living large. Designer clothes, expensive cars, jewelry worth more than most people made in a year. She'd moved into the penthouse that used to be Trinity's home and redecorated it completely, erasing every trace of Trinity's existence. She also learned that Melody was cheating on Jalen with his business partner, a man named Devon Cross. They'd been spotted at restaurants, at hotels, at charity galas where they thought nobody was watching, and Melody was stealing, siphoning money from Jalen's accounts into offshore holdings in her name. Small amounts at first, then larger, millions. "She's going to bankrupt him," Keisha said, impressed despite herself. "This woman is good." "She's about to get caught," Trinity corrected. "I'm going to make sure of it." Trinity passed this information to Rashad, who passed it to the FBI agents building the case against Jalen. They were fascinated. A wife stealing from her husband while he was under federal investigation. A con artist with multiple identities married to a money launderer. It was a prosecutor's dream. "We want to move now," Rashad said during one visit. "Arrest them both before she drains him completely." "No," Trinity said again. "Wait until I get out. I want to be there when it all comes down. I want to see their faces." "Trinity, that's another year." "I've already waited 2. What's one more?" During this time, something else happened. Trinity became a leader in the prison. Other inmates, seeing her strength, her intelligence, her refusal to break, started coming to her for help. She taught women to read. She helped them write letters to their children. She used her medical knowledge to diagnose ailments the prison nurses missed. She became known as the surgeon, not because of her past, but because of how precisely she dissected problems and found solutions. She saved a woman's life when she went into diabetic shock and the guards were slow to respond. She talked down another woman from suicide by sitting with her through the night, just talking, just listening. She organized a library program that actually got women interested in reading. The warden noticed. "Dr. Rodman, you've been a model prisoner. Your parole hearing is coming up. With good behavior, you could be out in 6 months instead of 1 year." "I don't want parole," Trinity said. "I want to serve my full sentence." The warden looked at her like she was crazy. "Nobody wants to stay in prison." "I do. I have things to finish here." What she didn't say was that she was building an army, women who owed her favors, women who would remember her kindness, women who, when they got out, would be willing to help her if she needed it. Because Trinity was thinking long-term. She was thinking about what came after the revenge, after Jalen and Melody were destroyed. She was thinking about rebuilding her life, and she wanted allies for that. 6 months before her release, Trinity learned something that changed everything. Keisha got word from her contacts that Melody was pregnant again, actually pregnant this time, according to medical records that appeared to be legitimate. "She's pregnant with Jalen's baby," Keisha said. "Or at least, that's what she's telling him. Want to bet it's actually Devon Cross's kid?" Trinity thought about this. A baby complicated things. If Melody was actually pregnant, if there was actually a child involved, Trinity would need to be careful. She wouldn't punish an innocent child for its parents' sins. "Find out if it's real this time," Trinity said. "Use whatever contacts you have. I need to know if this pregnancy is legitimate or if it's another con." The answer came back 2 weeks later. The pregnancy was real. Melody was 12 weeks along. But the paternity was questionable. Devon Cross had been seen coming and going from the penthouse when Jalen was away on business. The timing suggested the baby could be either man's. "A DNA test would clear it up," Keisha said. "We'll get one," Trinity promised, "when the time is right." Trinity spent her final months in prison in a state of focused calm. She'd learned everything Keisha could teach her. She'd built alliances with women across every cell block. She'd memorized every detail of Jalen's financial empire, every account number, every shell company, every suspicious transaction. She'd built a case that would stand up in federal court and destroy him completely. And she'd documented everything Melody had done, the fake pregnancy, the fabricated medical records, the theft, the fraud, the affair, everything. Rashad visited her one last time before her release. The FBI wants to move immediately. They want you in witness protection until the trial. No protection, Trinity said. I want to be visible. I want Jalen and Melody to see me. I want them to know what's coming. Trinity, these are dangerous people. Jalen has connections to cartels. If he figures out you're the one who brought them down, he already knows I'm angry. Let him wonder what I'm going to do. Fear is more effective than surprise. Rashad shook his head. You've changed. You're harder than when you came in. Prison has a way of doing that, Trinity said. But I'm not hard. I'm focused. There's a difference. The final weeks crawled by. Jalen kept coming to visit. Every single month, faithful as sunrise, he'd show up and Trinity would refuse to see him. The guards told her he'd sit in the waiting room for hours anyway, just in case she changed her mind, just in case she decided to forgive him. But Trinity had no forgiveness left. She'd used it all up in the first year, crying herself to sleep and wondering how the man she'd loved could have betrayed her so completely. Now all that remained was cold, calculated rage. The night before her release, Lakeisha helped her pack her few belongings. What's the first thing you're going to do when you get out? Trinity smiled, and it was a smile that would have terrified anyone who knew what she was planning. I'm going to hold a press conference. I'm going to tell the world exactly what happened to me, and then I'm going to watch Jalen's empire burn. And after that, I'm going to rebuild my life. I'm going to be a surgeon again. I'm going to help people. I'm going to do everything they tried to take from me. You're going to be okay, Lakeisha said. I'm going to be better than okay, Trinity corrected. I'm going to be unstoppable. Chapter 6. The Release. Trinity walked out of Westfield Correctional Facility at dawn on a Tuesday morning in October. The air was cold and sharp, smelling of autumn and freedom. She wore the clothes she'd been arrested in 3 years ago, a simple black dress that hung looser on her frame now. 3 years of prison food and stress had hollowed her out, made her lean and hard. Rashad Pierce was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against an unmarked sedan. When he saw her, he straightened up, and Trinity saw surprise flicker across his face. You look different, he said. I am different, Trinity replied. She wasn't lying. The woman who'd entered this prison 3 years ago had been soft, trusting, devastated by betrayal. The woman walking out was something else entirely, something forged in rage and patience and absolute determination. But outside the prison gates a crowd had gathered. News vans, reporters, cameras. Trinity stopped, surprised. She'd expected to slip out quietly. Your story leaked, Rashad said quietly. Someone at the prison talked to the press about the wrongfully convicted surgeon, about Melody's real identity, about the fake medical records. Trinity, you're all over the news. Trinity looked at the crowd. Dozens of reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, microphones being thrust forward. For a moment the old Trinity would have panicked, would have wanted to run and hide, but the new Trinity saw an opportunity. Good, she said. She squared her shoulders and walked toward the crowd. Dr. Rodman, is it true you were framed? Dr. Rodman, do you have a statement? Dr. Rodman, what do you plan to do now? Trinity stopped in front of the cameras. She looked directly into the lens of the nearest one, and she spoke with the calm precision of a surgeon making an incision. My name is Trinity Rodman. 3 years ago I was convicted of assault causing the miscarriage of my husband's unborn child. I was sentenced to 3 years in prison. I served every day of that sentence, and I want you all to know I was innocent. The crowd erupted with questions. Trinity held up her hand. The woman who accused me, Melody Hobson, lied. She was never pregnant. The medical records showing her pregnancy and miscarriage were fabricated. She framed me to steal my husband and my life, and my husband, Jalen Hurts, helped her do it by believing her lies over his wife of 10 years. More shouting, more questions. Trinity kept talking, her voice cutting through the noise like a scalpel through flesh. But here's what they didn't count on. Prison didn't break me. It made me stronger. It gave me time to investigate, to learn, to understand exactly what they did and how they did it. And now I'm going to make sure they pay for every lie they told. Dr. Rodman, are you planning to sue? I'm planning to do much more than sue, Trinity said. She looked directly at the camera again, knowing Jalen would be watching, knowing Melody would be watching. I'm planning to tell the truth, all of it. And the truth is going to destroy them both. She got into Rashad's car while the reporters were still shouting questions. As they drove away, Trinity saw her face on every news screen they passed. Wrongfully convicted surgeon released after 3 years. That was quite a statement, Rashad said. That was a declaration of war, Trinity corrected. They drove to the federal building downtown. Trinity had agreed to debrief with the FBI before doing anything else. She owed them that much, given they'd helped build the case. The conference room was filled with serious-looking agents in dark suits. At the head of the table sat Special Agent Simone Duchamp, the lead investigator on Jalen's case. She was a black woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything twice. Dr. Rodman, Simone said, standing to shake her hand. Thank you for coming. We've been building this case for 2 years based on your information. We're ready to move. Trinity sat down. Tell me what you have. For the next 6 hours, Trinity gave them everything. Every account number Keisha had taught her to track. Every suspicious transaction she'd memorized. Every pattern of money laundering she'd identified. Every connection between Jalen's business and the 3 cartel operations he was working for. The agents took notes frantically. Simone watched Trinity with something like awe. You've handed us the most comprehensive RICO case I've ever seen, Simone said when Trinity finally finished. We can take down not just Jalen Hurts, but his entire network, his business partners, his suppliers, his distributors, everyone. When do you move? Trinity asked. Dawn tomorrow. Simultaneous raids at 47 locations. We'll arrest Jalen at his office. We'll arrest Melody at your old penthouse. We'll freeze every asset, every account, everything. By tomorrow afternoon, Jalen Hurts will have nothing. Trinity smiled. Perfect. There's one thing, Simone said carefully. The prosecutor wants you to testify. Are you prepared for that? I've been preparing for 3 years. That night, Trinity stayed in a hotel room Rashad had booked for her. It was strange, being in a room with a real bed, a real bathroom, privacy. She stood in the shower for an hour, letting hot water wash away 3 years of prison grime. Her phone, returned to her with her belongings, had hundreds of missed messages, from her mother begging her to call, from former colleagues at the hospital, from friends who'd abandoned her during the trial, from reporters wanting interviews, and from Jalen. Dozens of texts, all saying the same thing. Please call me. I need to explain. I'm so sorry. Trinity blocked his number. She ordered room service, real food that wasn't prison cafeteria slop. She ate steak and fresh vegetables and dessert. She drank wine. She watched television. Simple pleasures that felt overwhelming after so long without them. And then she called her mother. Trinity? Her mother's voice cracked. Oh God, baby, is it really you? It's me, Mama. Her mother sobbed. I tried to visit. They wouldn't let me. Jalen said he'd arrange for me to be on the visitor list, but somehow my name never got added. I wrote to you. Did you get my letters? Trinity hadn't received a single letter from her mother, which meant Jalen had blocked them, had isolated her completely. I didn't get them, Mama, but I'm out now. I'm okay. Come home. Please come home to Atlanta. Get away from that city, away from that man. I can't. Not yet. I have things to finish here. Trinity, that man almost destroyed you. Let it go. Come home. I can't let it go, Mama. He needs to pay for what he did. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Your father would have wanted you to move on, to forgive. Daddy would have wanted justice, Trinity corrected, and that's exactly what I'm going to get. After she hung up, Trinity lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the FBI would arrest Jalen and Melody. Tomorrow, the world would learn the truth. Tomorrow, her revenge would begin in earnest. She should have felt victorious, should have felt satisfied. But all Trinity felt was empty, because revenge, she was learning, was a hollow victory. It wouldn't give her back the 3 years she'd lost. It wouldn't erase the betrayal. It wouldn't heal the wounds. But it would make sure they never hurt anyone else again, and that would have to be enough. Trinity closed her eyes and slept without dreaming. Chapter 7. The storm dawn broke cold and grey over the city. Trinity stood at her hotel window drinking coffee and watching the sunrise. Somewhere out there, 47 FBI teams were preparing to move. Somewhere out there, Jalen was probably still sleeping next to Melody, oblivious to the storm about to hit. Trinity's phone rang at 6:30. Rashad. It's happening, he said. Teams are moving now. You want to watch? Where? Federal Building. We've got live feeds of the raids. Trinity was dressed and in Rashad's car within minutes. They drove through empty streets, past stores just opening, past people starting their normal days. None of them knew that today, one of the city's most powerful men would fall. The Federal Building was buzzing with activity, agents running between rooms, phones ringing, computer screens showing live feeds from body cameras. Trinity stood in a conference room with Simone and a dozen other agents, watching it all unfold. Team Alpha breaching Hertz Import-Export headquarters now, a voice crackled over the radio. On the screen, Trinity watched FBI agents in tactical gear swarm into Jalen's office building. She saw employees being herded into conference rooms. She saw agents seizing computers, filing boxes, documents. She saw Jalen's secretary, Dorothy, crying as they led her away. Team Bravo at subject's residence. Another screen showed agents approaching the penthouse, Trinity's old home. She watched them breach the door, watched them move through rooms she'd decorated where she'd lived her life, watched them find Melody in the bedroom, probably still in bed. The audio crackled. Subject Melody Hertz secured. She's demanding to speak to her lawyer. Trinity's hands tightened on the coffee cup she was holding. On screen, she watched agents lead Melody out in handcuffs. Wearing a silk robe, her hair mussed, her face twisted in rage and shock. No tears, no fear, just pure fury at being caught. Where's Jalen? Simone asked. Team Alpha reports subject Jalen Hertz is en route to headquarters. He was at his gym. We grabbed him there. 30 minutes later, another screen showed Jalen being led out of a gym in handcuffs, wearing workout clothes, confusion all over his face. He was shouting something, demanding to know what was happening. The agents weren't answering. Trinity watched it all with cold satisfaction. This was what she'd been waiting for, this moment. These men and women who thought they were untouchable being brought down in the most public, humiliating way possible. All teams report successful execution, a voice said. Subjects secured, assets being seized now. Simone turned to Trinity. 47 arrests, including Jalen Hertz, Melody Hertz, and 45 of their associates. We've frozen 32 bank accounts totaling over $200 million. We've seized properties in 8 states. It's the biggest takedown we've had in years. What happens now? Trinity asked. Now we process them, book them, charge them, then the media circus begins. The media circus was already beginning. By noon, every news station in the city was covering the story. Massive FBI raid nets alleged money laundering ring. Prominent businessman arrested in cartel connection. The fall of Jalen Hertz. And woven through all of it, Trinity's story, the wrongfully convicted surgeon, the wife who'd been framed, the woman who'd spent 3 years in prison while her husband married her accuser. By 2 o'clock, Trinity's press conference from the day before had gone viral. Her face was everywhere. Her words were being quoted on every channel. Prison didn't break me. It made me stronger. Trinity's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Interview requests, book deals, speaking engagements. Everyone wanted her story. But Trinity only cared about one thing: making sure Jalen and Melody went down for everything they'd done. At 4 o'clock, Simone found her in the conference room. "The prosecutor wants to meet with you. They're preparing the charges. They want your testimony on record." Trinity spent the next 8 hours with prosecutors, going through every detail of her case. They recorded everything: her relationship with Jalen, the affair, Melody's fake pregnancy, the frame-up, the trial, the conviction. And then the really damaging stuff: Jalen's criminal enterprise, the money laundering, the cartel connections, the offshore accounts. Everything Keisha had taught her, everything she'd memorized, all of it spilled out in devastating detail. "This is incredible," the lead prosecutor said when Trinity finally finished. "You've given us everything we need to put them both away for decades. What are the charges?" "For Jalen, racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy, tax evasion. We're looking at 40 to 50 years minimum. For Melody, fraud, perjury, conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, 20 to 30 years. And the fake pregnancy, the fake medical records, also fraud, also perjury. We're building a case that will show she systematically destroyed your life for personal gain. No jury is going to have sympathy for her." Trinity finally allowed herself to feel it. Satisfaction, not happiness, not joy, but the cold, hard satisfaction of a job well done. That night, exhausted, Trinity went back to her hotel, but she couldn't sleep. So she turned on the television and watched the news coverage of the arrests, watched legal experts dissect the case, watched former associates of Jalen's distance themselves from him, watched the empire he'd built crumble in real time. And then, at midnight, her phone rang. Unknown number. Trinity almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Trinity." Jalen's voice, broken and desperate. "Please, I need to talk to you." "How did you get this number?" "I had one phone call. I used it to bribe a guard to get your number. Please listen to me." Trinity should have hung up, should have blocked the number. But 3 years of refusing his visits, of not hearing his voice, made her curious. "You have 60 seconds. "I'm sorry." Jalen's voice cracked. "God, Trinity, I'm so sorry. I didn't know, I swear to you, I didn't know about the fake pregnancy. I didn't know about the medical records. Melody fooled me too." "You chose to believe her over me." I know I did, and I've regretted it every single day for 3 years. I tried to visit you. You wouldn't see me. I tried to write to you. You wouldn't respond. I tried to help you and you refused everything. Because you put me in prison, Jalen. You stood up in court and testified against me. You convinced a jury I was capable of violence. You destroyed my life for a woman who was lying to you from the start. I know. God, I know." He was crying now. "I was an idiot. I was blinded by the affair, by the guilt, by everything. And she played me perfectly. But Trinity, please, you have to believe me. I didn't know about the money laundering. I didn't know about the cartels. That was my business partners. I was just signing papers, running the legitimate side." "Liar," Trinity said softly. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You've known for years, and now you're going to pay for it. Trinity, please. I love you. I never stopped loving you. This whole thing with Melody, it was a mistake. A terrible mistake. But we can fix this. You can testify that I didn't know about the criminal side. You can help me." Trinity laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. "Help you? After everything you did to me? After you sent me to prison for 3 years? After you married the woman who framed me? You want me to help you? Please, I'm begging you. If you ever loved me—" "I did love you," Trinity said. "For 10 years I loved you more than anything in the world. I would have died for you, and you threw that away for a woman who lied to your face every single day. I know, I'm so sorry, but we can get through this, together, like we used to be. Partners. We're not partners anymore, Jalen. We're not even married anymore. You divorced me while I was in prison, remember? You married Melody. You chose her, so now you get to go down with her. Trinity, please. She hung up, blocked the number, and sat in the silence of her hotel room, shaking. Part of her, a small, traitorous part, had wanted to forgive him, had wanted to believe that he'd been fooled just like she had, that he was a victim too. But the larger part, the part that had spent 3 years in prison counting down the days, knew the truth. Jalen had chosen to believe Melody. He'd chosen to testify against Trinity. He'd chosen to divorce her and marry her accuser. Those were all choices he'd made with full knowledge of what he was doing. And now he would face the consequences of those choices. Trinity got into bed and finally slept. And this time she dreamed, not of prison, not of betrayal, but of standing in a courtroom, raising her right hand, swearing to tell the truth, and watching Jalen's face as she destroyed him completely. Chapter 8. The Reckoning Begins. The city exploded with the story. Within 24 hours of the arrests, Trinity's face was on every screen, every paper, every social media feed. Wrongfully convicted surgeon brings down husband's criminal empire. The narrative was perfect, tailor-made for maximum public sympathy. The loyal wife betrayed, the innocent woman imprisoned, the surgeon who dedicated her life to saving people destroyed by lies. Trinity's hospital called. Dr. Raymond Walsh, the chief of surgery, the man who'd suspended her 3 years ago without a second thought. Dr. Rodman, he said, his voice stiff, the board has reviewed your case in light of recent developments. We would like to formally apologize and offer you immediate reinstatement with full back pay and benefits. Trinity let the silence stretch, let him squirm. The board is also prepared to offer a settlement, he continued. $15 million for wrongful termination and damage to your reputation. I'll consider it, Trinity said. My lawyer will be in touch. She hung up and smiled. 15 million. Added to the book deals being offered, the speaking engagements, the media appearances, Trinity was about to be wealthier than she'd ever been as Jalen's wife. Ironic. But money wasn't why she was doing this. She was doing this for one reason, to watch them burn. The arraignment was set for the following Monday. Trinity arrived at the courthouse to find it surrounded by media, hundreds of reporters, cameras everywhere, protesters holding signs, justice for Trinity and believe women, and lock them up. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Trinity sat in the gallery with Rashad on one side and Simone on the other. She wore a simple grey suit, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked professional, composed, unbreakable. The defendants were brought in one by one. Jalen's business partners first, looking scared and desperate. Then Melody, wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed, her usual perfect appearance destroyed. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup, no designer clothes. She looked like what she was, a criminal. When Melody saw Trinity sitting in the gallery, her face twisted with pure hatred. Then they brought in Jalen. He looked terrible, hollow-eyed, unshaven, broken. He searched the courtroom until he found Trinity, and their eyes met across the space. She saw pleading in his expression, desperation, love even. Trinity looked away. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Margaret Chen, called the court to order. The charges were read. For Jalen, racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit fraud, tax evasion, 47 counts total. For Melody, fraud, perjury, conspiracy, identity theft, 32 counts. How did the defendants plead? Judge Chen asked. Jalen's lawyer stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor." Melody's lawyer stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor." Of course they pled not guilty. Trinity had expected nothing less. But it didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Jennifer Park, stood to argue bail. "Your Honor, these defendants are flight risks. Mr. Hertz has connections to international criminal organizations and access to offshore accounts we're still tracking. Ms. Hertz, also known as Melissa Thornwood, has a history of assuming false identities and disappearing when facing charges. We request both defendants be held without bail," Jalen's lawyer argued. Melody's lawyer argued. But Judge Chen wasn't swayed. "Bail is denied. Both defendants will remain in custody pending trial." Jalen's face went white. Melody started shouting, something about her pregnancy, about needing medical care, about her rights. The judge had her removed from the courtroom. After the arraignment, Trinity held another press conference on the courthouse steps. The crowd was massive. Every major news outlet was there. "Today, justice began," Trinity said into the microphones. 3 years ago, I was convicted of a crime I didn't commit. I spent 3 years in prison, while the woman who framed me lived in my home, spent my husband's money, and enjoyed the life that was stolen from me. But the truth has a way of coming out, and today, that truth began to set things right. Dr. Rodman, what do you want to happen to them? I want them to feel what I felt. I want them to spend years behind bars, counting days, wondering if they'll ever be free again. I want them to lose everything, the way I lost everything, and I want them to know that this happened because they underestimated me. They thought prison would break me. Instead, it gave me time to build the case that would destroy them both. Do you have any message for your ex-husband? Trinity looked directly at the nearest camera, knowing Jalen would see this in his jail cell. You had 3 years to see me in prison. I refused every visit. Now you'll spend the next 40 years in prison, and I won't visit you either. You made your choice. Now live with it. The clip went viral instantly. Trinity's calm, cold delivery, her complete lack of emotion, her absolute certainty. It was devastating. That night, Trinity finally went to see Keisha Okonkwo. Her appeal had come through based on the same FBI investigation. She'd been released 2 days ago. They met at a restaurant downtown. Keisha looked different out of prison clothes, wearing a simple dress, her natural hair styled, her face showing the age that prison had hidden. You did it, Keisha said, raising her wine glass. You actually did it. We did it, Trinity corrected. I couldn't have built that case without everything you taught me. What happens now? Now I rebuild. The hospital wants me back. I have job offers from 3 other hospitals too. I have enough money to never work again if I don't want to, but I want to work. I want to be a surgeon again. I want to save lives. And after the trial? Trinity was quiet for a moment. After the trial, I'm going to start a foundation for wrongfully convicted people, to help them rebuild their lives when they get out, to provide legal support, financial support, job training, everything I wish I'd had. Keisha's eyes got misty. That's beautiful, Trinity. I'm going to call it the Second Chance Surgical Center. We'll provide medical care to people who can't afford it, particularly former inmates, and we'll fund it with the settlement money from the hospital. They talked for hours about prison, about survival, about what comes after revenge. And when they finally parted ways, Trinity felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years: hope. The trial was set to begin in 2 months. The prosecutor's office was confident. The evidence was overwhelming. Jalen's business partners were flipping, taking plea deals in exchange for testimony against him. The cartel connections were being exposed. The money trails were being followed. Everything Trinity had provided was being used to build an ironclad case. But Trinity knew trials could be unpredictable. Jalen had money for the best lawyers. Melody was a skilled liar. They could still wiggle out of this if she wasn't careful. So Trinity prepared. She worked with the prosecutors, going over her testimony again and again until it was perfect. She reviewed documents. She studied the evidence. She became the prosecution's star witness, the person who could connect all the dots, and she waited for the trial that would finally, truly, end Jalen and Melody's lives as they knew them. Chapter 9. Justice Falls. The trial began on a cold January morning. Trinity arrived at the courthouse to find it surrounded by media, protesters, and curious onlookers. Security was massive. The case had become a national sensation. Books were already being written. Documentaries were being filmed. Trinity's story had captured the public imagination in a way few cases ever did. Inside, the courtroom was packed with reporters, legal observers, and people who'd waited hours for a seat. Trinity sat in the front row behind the prosecution table. She wore a navy suit, her hair in a professional bun, looking every inch the respected surgeon she'd once been. Jalen was brought in first. He'd lost weight in jail. His expensive suits had been replaced with a cheap one his lawyer provided. He looked diminished, broken. When he saw Trinity, he mouthed something that looked like, "I'm sorry." She didn't react. Then Melody arrived. She'd somehow managed to look presentable even in jail. Her hair was styled. She wore makeup. She'd probably charmed some guard into getting her cosmetics, but she couldn't hide the fear in her eyes. Judge Margaret Chen called the court to order. The jury filed in, 12 ordinary people who would decide Jalen and Melody's fates. Trinity studied them. 8 women, 4 men, mixed races, mixed ages, a good jury for the prosecution. Jennifer Park stood to give her opening statement. She was brilliant. She laid out the case with surgical precision. Jalen's criminal enterprise, the cartel connections, the money laundering, Melody's con artist history, the fake pregnancy, the frame-up, Trinity's wrongful conviction, the systematic theft from Jalen's accounts. "This is a case about lies," Jennifer said, looking at the jury. "Lies that destroyed an innocent woman's life. Lies that enabled a massive criminal conspiracy. Lies that made these 2 defendants rich while breaking every law that matters. By the end of this trial, you will see exactly what kind of people Jalen Hurts and Melody Hobson really are, and you will have no choice but to find them guilty on all counts." Jalen's lawyer tried to argue that he'd been duped by his business partners, that he didn't know about the money laundering, that he was just a businessman trying to make a living. Melody's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of Jalen's manipulation, a woman trying to escape an abusive relationship, a mother trying to protect her unborn child, but the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution spent 2 weeks presenting witnesses. FBI agents testified about the raids. Forensic accountants traced the money. Jalen's business partners, taking plea deals, testified about his direct involvement in the money laundering. The web of lies was exposed, thread by thread. Then came the moment Trinity had been waiting for, Melody's fake pregnancy. Jennifer called Dr. Zainab Ahmed to the stand, an obstetrician who'd reviewed all of Melody's medical records. "Dr. Ahmed, you reviewed the medical records provided by Miss Hobson showing her pregnancy and subsequent miscarriage. What did you find?" Dr. Ahmed's testimony was devastating. The records were sophisticated forgeries. The ultrasound images were stock photos taken from medical databases. The blood work results were fabricated. The prescriptions were signed by a doctor who doesn't exist. Ms. Hobson was never pregnant. "How can you be certain?" "We subpoenaed her actual medical records from her primary care physician. There is no record of any pregnancy, no prenatal visits, no prescriptions for prenatal vitamins, nothing. Additionally, we tested blood samples taken at the time of her alleged miscarriage. She had no pregnancy hormones in her system. She was never pregnant." The courtroom erupted. Judge Chen had to call for order. Melody was shouting something, her lawyer trying to calm her. Jalen was staring at Melody like he'd never seen her before. Then Jennifer called Trinity to the stand. Trinity walked to the witness box with her head high. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. And then, for 3 hours, she told her story. She told them about her marriage to Jalen, about the 10 years of love and loyalty, about discovering the affair, about Melody's threats, about being framed, about the trial where Jalen testified against her, about 3 years in prison. "Dr. Rodman," Jennifer said gently, "during those 3 years, did Mr. Hertz attempt to visit you?" "Yes, every month." "Did you see him?" "No, I refused every visit." "Why?" Trinity looked directly at Jalen. "Because he chose to believe a liar over his wife, because he stood up in court and testified that I was capable of violence, because he destroyed my life for a woman who wasn't even pregnant. I had nothing to say to him." "Did you know about Mr. Hertz's criminal activities before your incarceration?" "No. I believed he ran a legitimate import-export business. But while in prison, I met another inmate who taught me how to recognize money laundering patterns. I began to see that Jalen's business had all the hallmarks of a criminal enterprise. That's when I contacted Detective Pierce and the FBI. "So you helped build this case?" "Yes. I provided them with everything I knew: account numbers, business partners' names, patterns of suspicious activity, everything I could remember from 10 years of marriage." "Why?" Trinity's voice was steady. "Because they needed to pay for what they'd done, not just to me, but to everyone they'd hurt. Jalen was laundering money for cartels that deal in drugs, weapons, human trafficking. Melody had destroyed other women's lives before mine. They needed to be stopped." The cross-examination was brutal. Jalen's lawyer tried to paint Trinity as a vindictive ex-wife seeking revenge. Melody's lawyer tried to suggest Trinity had been involved in the money laundering all along. But Trinity was prepared. She answered every question calmly, clearly, with receipts for everything she claimed. When she finally stepped down from the witness stand, she felt lighter. She'd told her truth. The jury had heard her. Now it was in their hands. The prosecution rested after 3 weeks. The defense tried to mount a case, but there was nothing they could do. The evidence was too strong, the witnesses too credible. Jalen's own business partners had testified against him. Melody's past victims had come forward to show her pattern of fraud. Closing arguments were powerful. Jennifer spoke for 2 hours, weaving together every piece of evidence into a devastating narrative. Then she ended with something that made the entire courtroom silent. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Trinity Rodman spent 3 years in prison for a crime that never happened, a baby that never existed, because these 2 defendants wanted money and power more than they wanted truth or justice. They destroyed an innocent woman's life without a second thought. Now it's time for them to face the consequences of their lies." The jury deliberated for 3 days. Trinity spent those days in her hotel, unable to eat, unable to sleep. This was it. This was the moment everything came down to. On the 3rd day, the call came. The jury had reached a verdict. Trinity returned to the courthouse. The crowd outside had grown. Everyone wanted to see how this ended. Inside, the courtroom was silent with anticipation. The jury filed in. Not one of them looked at Jalen or Melody. That was a good sign for the prosecution. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Chen asked. "We have, Your Honor," the forewoman said. "On the charge of racketeering. How do you find?" "Guilty." "On the charge of money laundering?" "Guilty." "On the charge of conspiracy?" "Guilty." Every count. Guilty, guilty, guilty. 47 guilty verdicts for Jalen. 32 guilty verdicts for Melody. The convictions kept coming, each one another nail in their coffins. Jalen was crying. Melody was shouting. The courtroom erupted in noise. Trinity sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her face calm. She'd won. They'd lost. Justice had been served. Judge Chen set sentencing for 2 weeks later, but everyone knew what was coming. With the number of convictions and the severity of the crimes, both defendants were looking at decades in prison. As they led Jalen and Melody out in handcuffs, Jalen looked back at Trinity one last time. His face was destroyed with grief and regret. He mouthed, "I'm sorry." Trinity stood up. looked him directly in the eyes, and smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who'd won a war. Then she walked out of that courtroom into a crowd of reporters and cameras, and she gave them the quote that would define this case forever. For 3 years they told me I was guilty. For 3 years I lived in a cage because of their lies. Today, the truth finally came out. Today, justice was served. And today, I'm free, while they're the ones facing prison. I didn't break, I didn't beg, I didn't forgive. I destroyed them both, and I'd do it again. The city erupted. Trinity's face was on every screen. Her words were being repeated everywhere. I destroyed them both. That night, Trinity had dinner with Rashad, Simone, and Keisha. They celebrated. They toasted to justice. They laughed for the first time in what felt like years. "What happens now?" Rashad asked. Trinity smiled. "Now, I live my life. The life they tried to take from me. I go back to being a surgeon. I start my foundation. I help other people who've been wrongfully convicted. I become something more than just a victim of their lies." "You're already more than that," Keisha said. "You're a symbol of strength, of resilience, of refusing to be broken." Trinity raised her glass. To refusing to be broken. They all drank to that. 2 weeks later, Trinity attended the sentencing hearing. This time she wasn't nervous. She knew what was coming. Judge Chen sentenced Jalen Hurts to 45 years in federal prison. She sentenced Melody Hobson, also known as Melissa Thornwood, to 25 years. "You both destroyed an innocent woman's life," Judge Chen said. "You lied, you cheated, you stole. You showed no remorse until you were caught. The sentences you're receiving reflect the severity of your crimes and the harm you've caused. May you spend every day of your incarceration reflecting on what you've done." Jalen tried to speak, tried to apologize to Trinity one more time, but Judge Chen ordered him removed from the courtroom. Melody spat at Trinity as they led her out. Security had to restrain her. She was screaming threats, screaming that this wasn't over, screaming that Trinity would pay. But Trinity just watched her go with cold satisfaction. Melody would spend the next 25 years in prison. She'd experience exactly what Trinity had experienced, except Trinity had been innocent, and Melody was guilty of everything and more. After the sentencing, Trinity held one final press conference. "Today, justice was fully served," she said to the cameras. "Jalen Hurts and Melody Hobson will spend decades in prison for their crimes, but this isn't just about them. This is about everyone who's been wrongfully convicted, everyone who's been framed, everyone who's spent years in prison for crimes they didn't commit. I'm starting a foundation to help those people, to give them the resources I wish I'd had, to make sure they have a chance at rebuilding their lives. Because that's what I'm doing now, rebuilding. And I'm doing it stronger, better, and more determined than ever before." The questions came fast. About the foundation, about her plans, about whether she'd forgive Jalen. "I'll never forgive him," Trinity said simply. "Forgiveness isn't necessary for me to move on. I don't need to forgive him to be happy. I just need to live my life and let him rot in his cage. That's enough." Chapter 10. The Empire. The Second Chance Surgical Center opened 6 months after the trial ended. Trinity stood in the lobby of the converted warehouse she'd bought and renovated, looking at the clean white walls, the examination rooms, the surgical suites. It was perfect. A place where former inmates could get medical care they desperately needed, where people without insurance could be treated with dignity, where second chances were real, not just a fantasy. Keisha Okonkwo was the foundation's financial director, managing the millions from Trinity's hospital settlement. Rashad Pierce had left the police force to become head of security. Other women Trinity had met in prison worked as patient advocates, helping people navigate the system. The opening day was covered by every major news outlet. Trinity gave tours, shook hands, and explained her vision. By the end of the day, they'd seen 40 patients, all free, all treated with respect. "You did it," Keisha said that evening as they locked up. "You actually built something good from all that pain." "We did it," Trinity corrected. "This is all of ours." Trinity's memoir, The Reckoning, hit bookstores the following week. It became an instant bestseller, spending months at #1. The book didn't just tell her story. It exposed the flaws in the justice system, the ease with which someone could be wrongfully convicted, the difficulty of proving innocence once convicted, the price of trusting the wrong person. Oprah called. Ellen called. Every major talk show wanted her. Trinity accepted selective interviews, using each platform to talk about wrongful convictions and the need for justice reform. She appeared on a panel at Harvard Law School, gave the commencement speech at her alma mater, testified before Congress about needed reforms to the criminal justice system. She became a voice for the voiceless, an advocate for the wrongly accused. But she also went back to her first love, surgery. The hospital had begged her to return, offering her chief of trauma surgery. She'd accepted. Every day, she saved lives, put people back together, did the work she'd trained her whole life to do. One afternoon, Trinity was in surgery when a nurse approached. "Dr. Rodman, there's a woman in the waiting room asking for you. She says it's urgent." Trinity finished closing her patient and went to wash up. In the waiting room, she found a young black woman, maybe 25, nervously twisting her hands. "Dr. Rodman," the woman said, standing quickly. "I'm Aaliyah. I just got out of Westfield. I was wrongfully convicted of theft. Spent 2 years inside. I don't have anywhere to go, no money, no job, but I read your book, and I thought maybe you could help me." Trinity looked at this young woman and saw herself 3 years ago, lost, desperate, needing someone to believe in her. "Come with me," Trinity said. "Let's figure this out together." That became a pattern. People would find Trinity, former inmates, wrongly convicted people, those struggling to rebuild after prison, and Trinity helped every single one, found them jobs, got them medical care, connected them with resources, built a network of people helping people. The city started calling her a hero. Trinity hated that word. She wasn't a hero. She was just someone who'd survived and was trying to help others survive too. News reports about Jalen and Melody trickled in occasionally. Jalen was in a federal penitentiary in Texas. He'd tried to appeal his conviction twice. Both appeals were denied. He'd be eligible for parole in 30 years when he'd be 75 years old. Melody was in a women's prison in Colorado. She'd tried to escape once and had years added to her sentence. She'd be eligible for parole in 35 years if she lived that long. Neither had tried to contact Trinity. Smart of them. Trinity's dating life was slow to restart. She'd been deeply scarred by Jalen's betrayal, but eventually she met someone. Dr. Isaiah Washington, a pediatric surgeon at her hospital. He was kind, patient, understanding of her past. They took things slowly, no rushing, no pressure, just two people learning to trust again. A year after the trial, Trinity was invited to speak at a women's empowerment conference. She stood on stage in front of 5,000 women and told her story. Every painful detail, the betrayal, the lies, the prison time, the revenge, the rebuilding. When she finished, the audience was silent for a moment. Then someone stood up and started clapping. Then another, then another. Within seconds, the entire audience was on their feet, applauding, many of them crying. A young woman approached Trinity after the speech. "How did you do it? How did you survive all that and come out strong?" Trinity smiled. "They put me in a cage thinking it would destroy me. Instead, I used that time to become something they should have feared. I became focused. I became strategic. I became unstoppable. And when I walked out, I had a plan. Prison didn't break me. It forged me into something harder, stronger, better." What advice would you give someone going through something similar? Trinity thought carefully. "Don't let bitterness consume you. Use it. Channel that pain into something productive. Document everything. Build your case. Be patient. And when your moment comes, strike with everything you have. But then, and this is important, let it go. Get your justice and move on. Don't let revenge become your whole life. Build something new, something better, something they can't touch. The woman hugged her, crying, "Thank you. You give people like me hope." That became Trinity's mission, giving hope. She spoke at prisons, telling inmates there was life after incarceration. She spoke at law schools, teaching future lawyers about the importance of believing their clients. She spoke anywhere someone would listen, spreading the message that one person's lies don't have to destroy you. On the 3-year anniversary of her release, Trinity visited Westfield Correctional Facility, not as an inmate this time, but as a guest speaker. She talked to the women inside about rebuilding, about hope, about refusing to let circumstances define you. After the talk, one woman approached her. "You came back. Why?" "Because someone needs to tell you that there's life after this, that you're not forgotten, that second chances are real if you're willing to work for them." Trinity left the prison that day feeling lighter. She'd closed a circle. She'd transformed her pain into purpose. In her office at the Second Chance Surgical Center, Trinity kept one thing from her past, a photo from her wedding day. Not to remember Jalen, but to remember the woman she'd been. Naive, trusting, soft. That woman was gone forever. In her place was someone stronger, someone who'd walked through fire and emerged transformed. Trinity didn't regret what she'd done to Jalen and Melody. She didn't lose sleep over their prison sentences. They'd made their choices. They'd destroyed her life for their own gain, and she'd simply shown them that every action has consequences. Justice wasn't just about courts and juries. Sometimes justice was a woman counting down days in a prison cell, building a case brick by brick, and then walking out to dismantle everything her enemies had built. That evening, Trinity performed surgery on a young man who'd been shot. She saved his life. When his family thanked her, crying with relief, Trinity felt that familiar rush of purpose. This was who she was, not a victim, not a survivor even. She was a surgeon, a healer, a fighter, someone who'd been knocked down and had gotten back up swinging. The empire she built wasn't made of money or power. It was made of second chances and helped hands and lives saved. It was made of women who'd been broken finding ways to heal. It was made of refusing to let the worst moment of your life define you. Trinity Rodman had walked out of prison 3 years ago with nothing but rage and a plan. Now she had purpose, impact, legacy. She'd turned her reckoning into redemption, not for Jalen, not for Melody, but for herself. And that was the greatest revenge of all, living well, helping others, and proving that they hadn't broken her. They'd just made her stronger. The end.